All right, we're live.
All right, we can go to the next slide.
Am I advancing? Okay.
I just saw this on the. I've never seen it put that way. I thought that was pretty good. Are we going to talk about this slide?
Yeah.
Let's talk. Link to our slides. We have lots of links in the slides, so definitely get that. I think the short. It's not really a super shortened URL, but it's kind of shorter.
Yeah, so if you want to follow along, it's readwhatyouwant.com/ethics. I'm Heidi Neltner. I'm a digital learning coach in Fort Thomas.
Is that case sensitive?
I asked him that question and he does not know.
I know the first part is not. The ethics might be, but let's just try it out.
Yeah.
Somebody do a capital E. Even the last parts?
On Bitly.
The last parts are, but the first part.
I'm talking about the last part.
Oh, the last part.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm James Allen. By the way, I'm our school library support person at the Kentucky Department of Education.
And the way this session came about is James and I often talk about AI and the implications of AI. And I think in the beginning, we both fully embraced it. But as things have gone on, James is a bit more discerning in his views on it. So
that is a polite way to put it.
As we've been planning over the last couple of months, because we really have been talking about this for a long time, even longer than a couple months. This is just a part of a conversation that we had, which always kind of
probably for like 2 years, like when they let everybody use the ChatGPT thing.
Yeah, it has been a while. Okay, I can't advance these slides.
Oh my gosh.
There we go. All right, so welcome to our session. Navigating the AI Age, Ethical Use and Media Literacy for K-12 Learners. And do you want to define it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for this session. If we say the word AI, that can mean lots of things. And I've had lots of people come back at me like, you've been using AI forever, James, you idiot. But I'm not talking about Google Maps, and I'm not talking about computers. Yes, I get that there's AI all over the place. I'm talking about mostly generative AI, the parts where you type in some words and then it spits some things back out at you. So,
yeah, and I think a lot of sessions, probably most of the sessions this
over
year
25 when I did a search just for artificial intelligence. So I think these bottom little images here you've probably already gotten in some other sessions. We're not going to talk about that stuff.
So as we've been discussing and as our views on AI have evolved, it's really hard to sometimes navigate our discussions, I guess. And so I think as James has become more extreme, I've tried to become more moderate in my views.
I don't think I like where this is going. Oh my gosh.
I'm just going to say we are here to listen and not judge.
I have to brace myself on this chair.
And so I've come up with an analogy that sort of describes our viewpoints on AI use, generative AI use specifically. And I kind of am comparing it to like the ethical debate around like one extreme is being vegan, where you don't eat any animal products, maybe because of religious views, maybe because of health,
right? Or like leather shoes, or
leather. Like you don't wear leather. It's all like plant-based, right? And it could be for a variety of reasons, but that's one end of the spectrum. And then there's the opposite end where they're just gonna like eat the McDonald's cheeseburger
every day,
all day. So we have
classes.
In terms of AI use, we have the vegan sort of area where you're going to exclude all generative AI use. And then you have maybe just vegetarian, where you're going to restrict your consumption. And then there's sort of this choices made with an intent to mitigate the impact. Like you're going to buy local, you're going to buy your beef from the local farmer or the local 4-H person to try to mitigate that environmental and ethical impact of the way the beef is raised. And then of course there's just McDonald's at the opposite end. So you can go anywhere on that spectrum.
So I appreciate the image that you generated that costs like 10 bottles of water to our planet, but
Look how much it looks like him.
Does that put you? Are you at the opposite end? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay.
I am made with intent.
Oh, okay.
But because I made this on Apple's Playground, Image Playground, this is new. And
It was only 8 bottles of water.
Maybe, but also, they trained it on their data and it doesn't leave my device and go out for further training. And I trust Apple. So that's where we're at.
I'm gonna quote that later. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. It's a whole spectrum, and James is closely getting to the vegan.
I might be whatever the other thing is beyond vegan.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
He might not be eating at all.
Yeah. I'm fasting. That is it. Ooh, I like that. So I don't know. I'll be up front. Like in the beginning, a whopping like 2 years and a few months ago, I played with the AI stuff like everybody else. I'm like, this is kind of cool and interesting and neat. And then about a few weeks later, I was starting to feel like this feels like when I was in college and there was this thing called Napster. And people were like, James, you don't have to buy music anymore. You can just go here and get it for free. That is the ill feeling I started having. And it was even more ill because I was a music education major and around musicians all the time who are trying to make a living doing music. And I think maybe the Napster part hit me a little harder than maybe some other college students. So anyway, there's not one like single issue I have with AI. If there was, I could probably work around it. Like I could talk myself into using this. And it's weird because I'm in a place where I think I'm an early adopter usually. Like I'm pretty sure when I was 5, I was making a database of my transformers and somehow saving it to a cassette tape on my Texas Instruments computer. I don't even remember how it worked. I just know that I had like a little spreadsheety thing and it had all my stuff. So anyway, I'm in a weird place where it's a technology that I don't feel good about even trying. I mean, I do use it some to see how it works, but I totally have gone to the place where I just keep reading more and more about the problems with it, and they don't, for me, outweigh the benefits. So I could talk about probably a dozen things, but these are the 5 we're going to just try and focus on. And probably the copyright one is the biggest one for me. And then a few sessions have talked about bias a little bit. The environment part is the sketchiest for me. Like I know there are impacts. I know we already have some climate change issues and we have energy issues and we have half the world that doesn't have access to clean water, but we're pushing this technology that we know is taking away from that. And then the ELIZA effect is treating computers like they are humans and giving them characteristics that they just don't have. It's made up garbage. And then 5 is hard too because it's kind of a little esoteric and out there. It's just something I think about a lot.
Yeah, no, these are our top 5 things that we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to say we're going to listen and we're not going to judge. James.
We didn't talk about that.
I'm reminding you. He judges me a lot. It's fine. This is not the order that we're going to go because we did change up the order just in case we don't make it through all our slides. Yep.
But you have the link. You can go click on all the stuff later.
Yep. So we're going to talk about copyright first because we're librarians. So that's important.
I think it's important to everyone, even beyond librarians. But I know like librarians are definitely, I think, know probably more about copyright because they're in a place where that happens. This Copyright Alliance that's linked there.
Do you want me to click?
You don't have to click on it. No. They're definitely pro copyright law and understanding. They're not really necessarily, they are kind of weighing in on the ethics of AI, but they're kind of keeping track of all of the lawsuits that are happening. And like when my boss, Dr. Marty Park, talks about other technologies coming in like mobile and social media, I don't remember there being like dozens and dozens and dozens of lawsuits at the very beginning of those technologies being introduced. So to me, that's like a giant red flag already. And there's just a quote there. I forget what the next one is. So I found this video just by accident the other day. I don't know who this PhD student is. He's like 1,000,000,000 times smarter than I am, and I think he had his hands in some creating of some of these tools. And he basically said, yeah, these companies are not admitting to what they're doing because it's not right. It's not fair use. It's breaking copyright. It is infringing on copyright of copyright owners. They did not license the material. They did not get permission. They did not compensate the people for their data, which they used to train their tools. So he said out loud, they definitely don't want you to tell you because it's probably going to hurt them in court. And that's why, I don't know, there's some big issues. So this fair use exercise thing, I definitely am not a lawyer. I don't know all of the things. I just know that I think about it a lot and I read about it a lot. So when people send me copyright questions, this is the exercise I go through. And I've talked with Marty and Sean Jackson, so I'm like, I think there was some confusion at first. They were thinking I was saying using the AI is not fair use. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fair use of creating the generative AI tools. Like, there's a big difference. So for me, it's like your principal brings you this copied workbook and tells you to make 20 more copies. And like the copying's already been done with copyright infringement, and then they're asking you to do more. So that the students using the copied workbook, that is fair use because it's, there's educational purposes, whatever. They don't need to ask permission. But the creation and the delivering of that workbook is not fair use. So I'm going to go through these 4 things that determine fair use. And I'll say really quickly, fair use is, there's not this binary black and white thing where you can just say, yes, this is fair use. No, this is not. There are guidelines, and these 4 things, you can go to the next one. These 4 areas that we question are what a judge would use if there was a lawsuit against someone to decide whether the use was fair or not, and if there's going to be penalties. So when people tell me, I'm using this, it's fair use, I'm like, you have no idea if it's fair use or not. You can be pretty sure that it is if you're doing certain things, but there is no definite. And even if the judge says it's fair use, you are still circumventing the permission of the creator of that content, which I have a problem with. So even though it has the word fair in there, I'm not totally sure it is fair. So this first one is the purpose and character of the work. It doesn't boil down to just a few things, but is it commercial? Is it for educational things? Is it whatever? So I'm kind of thinking about ChatGPT in all of these 4 questions here for this exercise. So I would say ChatGPT is definitely a commercial product. I think we all agree with that, right? Maybe? No?
Yeah, they
I
get
think
paid.
it is.
Yeah.
They're charging for it.
Yeah.
They're charging other companies to use it. Canva doesn't have its own AI. Like, they're paying OpenAI to use their tools.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a lot of times you'll hear from these companies, well, it's publicly available data. Publicly available doesn't mean it does not have copyright. Like, that's crazy talk. Like, we publish things all the time. It does not mean because I publish a book and sell it, it means you can take that book and do whatever you want with it. You can definitely read it, but when you start generating products that are competing with that book or that article or that image or that video, that gets into some dicey copyright areas. All right, so the next one is the amount. So just like I talked about that YouTube video, it's not just the back cover of the book or like the little introduction part, it's the whole book. So I think the judge is going to be like, well, you used the whole thing. You didn't just use a little quote from it, you used all of it. So that is why my thumb is going down on that one too. We missed 2 of them.
Did I go too far?
I think we missed 3, or we missed 2. We missed 2. Or we missed 1.
I don't know what you did.
What was the first one? You're good. No, the second. Yeah, go to the second one. So the nature of the work, is it like what's in an almanac, like facts, like that today is Pi Day? Like, those are not copyrightable. So like just basic facts and things, like those you can just kind of do whatever you want with, public domain, whatever you want to call it. When it gets to the creative side, the like fiction or, articles for a newspaper, that is a human like putting that together. Like, that's a different thing than trying to use something that's just well-known fact. So in this one, I kind of have my thumb sideways because it could be a mixture of both, right? When they sucked in all of our English language into the large language model, then it's a little of both probably. All right, now we can go to the next one. Sorry. We talked about amount. The last one is the effect on the market. This is ongoing, and this is why there are dozens, maybe hundreds of lawsuits already against this technology. Because it's not what people tell me sometimes. They argue and they're like, well, Google's been crawling the web forever, James. It's not crawling the web, it's using the data to create a tool that is now creating content that is competing with the content that it used to create it. Like, to me, that is a giant, like, I can't make those two things go together. All right. This was from this summer. Hank Green is I think he's an author too. I think of him mostly from that YouTube series.
Crash Course.
Crash Course, yeah. So he asked this question on the social media that I will not name. Training generative AI with copyrighted content that the AI companies do not have permission to use is fine, a gray area, unacceptable, or people who couldn't commit and just wanted to see the results. So it's 82% unacceptable out of 38,000 and something votes. So that's kind of telling. And then I did another survey myself on a Facebook group that's for librarians, all kinds of librarians, school, public, academic, all the librarians. I gave 4 options. So I said, is it cool if the generative AI is trained on copyrighted works and the using the tool is fine? I got 1%. Generative AI trained on copyrighted works is an infringement of copyright, but it's still cool to use the tool. And then the other one, the 98% is it's not cool at all. And the last one was it's trained on copyrighted works and it's fair use, but the tools on that training should not be used. So I did not have 38,000 responses. I wish I had, but I had 400. I thought that was better than nothing. So I think it's telling to the audience that I asked this question to. I did not ask some 20-year-old, I don't really like tech bros term, but I did not ask that group of people. I asked a group of librarians. So that's impacting that number, I'm sure.
Okay, so we're James listening.
I'm going to sit down now. Oh my gosh.
You got to listen and don't judge me.
I'm going to listen.
Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, like from a digital learning coach perspective, my job is to help mitigate the ethical concern of copyright infringement. So how can we approach this as educators with students? And I think I'm a little looser in my judgment than James is, mostly because, like, as I'm thinking about it, I'm looking at the history of technology, medical advancements, and we can see that a lot of times there are some very unethical things that happen when we make advancements. And so we have to figure out a way to live with that. We're in a position now where things are being fought out in a legal sense, and hopefully we'll come to some conclusions and see some better guidance as we progress. But in the meantime, I'm going to say that it's important for teachers to be selective in what tools they use. Especially with students, we want to check to see how that tool is trained and what kinds of possible implications that has on copyright. So, for example, I think the less icky of the AI generated image tools are Apple's Image Playground, because that's trained and licensed on their work and it stays on your device. It does not go out and allow for further training. So I'm cool with using the playground. The other one is Adobe Firefly. They claim that it's all trained on their Adobe stock images. So if I'm gonna,
I know we're just listening
and not judging.
I'm not judging, I'm just putting something in. Adobe Firefly, or what's in Adobe Express and all the Adobe tools, they were like my holdout because they were claiming that all of their stuff was trained on licensed images from people who have submitted to stock, who you get money back when they use your stuff. But then there was this article where they pointed out that Adobe is accepting Adobe stock from people who are using other generative image creators. So those tools are definitely infringing, and then they're creating art that's now going into the Adobe thing. So it's like poisoned for me now. So, all right, I'm
And
now back to not judging.
I'm still eating that cheeseburger, guys. Like, I'm just gonna still use it, right? But those are the two tools that I feel like are the least icky of the ones on the market. I'm also gonna say that all users, students, teachers, staff, should be disclosing use of the tool. And I know James said, that's like, I forget how you phrased it, but he hammered me on it where he's just like, oh, so you can break copyright, but you're telling them you're breaking copyright. Like, yeah, until it's, hashed out in the legal sense. So I'm encouraging teachers to use guidance, especially from professional organizations like College Board, MLA, APA, that kind of stuff.
I don't think I said it just like that.
I mean, you kind of did. It was kind of like that. And then for all users, we need to prioritize human authorship at all times. Include specific intentional directions for when students are allowed to use the assistance of AI. And there's like often an 80-20 rule where they're saying like 80% needs to be done by the human with 20% maybe by the AI. So here's just an example. This is from a college course, graduate course that I teach. And I just tell them specifically when they're allowed to and not to use AI. So like, for example, on this assignment, they're allowed to use it for brainstorming, but they are not allowed to use it for interviews, research, that kind of thing. And they have to disclose the use in an APA format. So this is a blurb that I put in all of my assignments. It's like when you're allowed to use it, when you're not allowed to use it. And it's usually for like thought partner kind of stuff.
And just to point out that I'm not judging you all or telling everyone to be a vegan, like I also taught a course at UK this fall. My policy was not that. I said you can use AI for whatever you want, but the requirement is that you tell me what you did and tell me the process that you used to use it. I didn't say thought partner. I said do the whole assignment that way, but you have to tell me how you got to the end result. I did not have anybody take me up on that, or they lied. So, all right.
Well, I do that too, and it's part of the assignment, yeah. I also think that teachers should explicitly instruct students not to try to generate characters that are copyrighted or artworks or music or text in the style of another person. That part can go a little iffy. Like sometimes you are allowed to use the style, but you can't like generate it in the style of Disney with Disney characters, okay? So you need to be a little careful about that. But it's just good to say like, don't try to get it to generate an Elsa character. And then for all users, if we see that the model is creating things that should be like a character that should be copyrighted, we need to report that or give it feedback that it's using copyrighted material and that output should have been should have been protected under copyright. And I did have an article there if you want to look at that article. I would also say test the tools before you give them to students to make sure that it's not going to generate something that could be copyright infringement. So for example, yesterday I put into ChatGPT, write a paragraph with Anna and Elsa in the style of Disney's Frozen. And it said, I can't write a new story using Anna and Elsa because they're copyrighted. So it said like, hey, no, we can't do this. So we're looking for tools that are going to help students and provide students with feedback that what they're requesting is a potential copyright infringement. So that's a way that I would mitigate and still enjoy my cheeseburger without, just being a free-for-all kind of thing. James is making faces. Yeah.
Okay, so this next part is, we could probably have like 4 hours just on this, but what I tell people, and I don't have a quote here, and I was kind of not complaining, but I had a slide the other day that somebody gave me, and I couldn't tell whether it was just something they were saying or they just used somebody else's quote and didn't quote them. But I want to know like where the source is from. But I've heard some crazy stories. I'm not naming any people, but I think there's some misconceptions, and I'm not upset that there are misconceptions because we are bombarded with ads that give the wrong impression about AI. Like they're giving it powers it just simply does not have. So the AI does not have knowledge. It does not have any information. Although it's trained on information, it does not know the information. It's just like in there. There's probabilities, there's tokens, there's all kinds of stuff. Wikipedia is weighted higher than Reddit. Like there's all these algorithms that do the stuff. But it does not know the difference between right and wrong. It does not know how to make itself sentient. It does not know if things are biased or unbiased or racist or unracist. It just does not know that. And there's, I think, a giant misconception, probably with people in our conference, that think that it does know things. And that's a little dangerous if we're going to be using this with students. All right. So this is a quote. This Per Axbaum, if I'm saying his name the wrong way, I think he might be from Finland. I don't know, Scandinavia, I think. But this is one of his quotes. The models are trained on human bias, racism, prejudice, hate, extremism. The outputs, without some serious intervention, will have characteristics of the input. So this is another one of my big problems. The AIs that we are using right now, the chatbots, Canva, all the people using OpenAI or they're using Claude, whatever they're using, they're trained on the crappiest part of humans that have written their stuff down. We do not know anything about how that's been mitigated. It's just not transparent. They're not even telling us what they've trained it on, not to mention how they're dealing with this. Like, yes, it's also been trained on good things that we've written and progressive, like kind, the best stuff, but it also has the worst parts of us, and we're wondering why it is racist and biased. Like, people are racist and biased. That's why the chatbot responses are that way too. I'm going to talk about this part. This kind of connects to what you were talking about a little bit, these terms. So I just completed the Canva's educator course for AI. I think a few times they mentioned maybe check over what it gives you, but it wasn't like a big call out, which is problematic. But nothing in that course that was about maybe 45 minutes of videos and work talked about their own terms of use of their AI products. So in my brain, I'm like, you all just gave me this course over here, like on the McDonald's hamburger side. Your terms are way more closer to my vegan side. So which are you? And every I didn't go to every Canvas session here, but I've not heard anybody talk about these terms, like 0 people. So I have a feeling people are not following these terms. And I just pulled out, this is not in order, like you can click on the link and read all of it. This one I made big, represent that output was human generated when it was not. It's saying you may not do that. And then you have to have rights to the stuff you're doing for the input. And then the accuracy part is telling, like they're telling you right now, what it generates is probably not right, or there's a good chance it may not be right. They're admitting that, so when they go to court, they're not like, well, Canva told me to eat the rocks. Like, they're saying, don't do that. All right, next one. So I think this is good, like, prohibited to use the products to mislead anyone that the content generated. When using output in your Canva designs, we ask that you let viewers of your designs know that the content is AI. They say this over and over in the terms, like repeated. Indicate that the content is AI generated in a way no user could reasonably miss or misunderstand. I've not seen any Canva things that have used magic tools that follow that. There's no citation on the garbage image they produce. There's no citation on the lesson plan that they got ideas for. I just have not seen that. So people are not doing it. And there's some more that's similar. And then I think the next one is open.
Just to clarify, they're putting that on the end user as the responsibility.
For sure. All the responsibility is on you to follow their terms. Even their own education department creating the AI course is not really following their terms. So I feel like that's a bit of a, not a bit of a, it's a big conflict. Was there one more before that? Oh, it's out of order. It's all right. I also linked some OpenAI terms that are very similar. OpenAI saying our content's probably not right. Like, don't trust anything we give you. But we have people in this session saying use AI for this, use AI for this, use AI for this, but they're not saying any of these things to take into consideration. All right.
Okay. So mitigation in ways that as a coach, I'm trying to like help, raise that awareness about bias and misinformation. you want to make sure that your school staff understands explicitly that things are going to be biased. So one of the things I just did with our middle school staff was I did a training on AI, and I asked the question, like, what do you know about bias in AI? And they were like, there is none. I mean, overwhelmingly, they thought there was no bias in AI. And I was like, oh, I had been failing them. So we had a little bit of a lengthier conversation about the bias that is involved in AI and then the misinformation that can come from that. We talked a little bit about like confirmation bias, like the way you're interacting with the chat bot or with ChatGPT or whatever may be amplifying your own biases. And so you have to be careful about that and kind of root that out. And so we need to think about how we're going to work to identify and mitigate that bias and how we're going to ensure outputs are accurate. A teacher action would then be to critically analyze outputs and provide students with support, talk about the features, look at the features to see if all students are going to be able to use it, check to see if that content is accurate and responds well to students who have different linguistic abilities. These are all things that we could do to help ensure that we're getting good outputs and that all students can use the resource. And I do have some like links down here with additional information if you want to check that out.
And that linguistic abilities part, like there's studies that show like the terrible AI detectors that don't really work ding people who are not native English speakers way more than it does people who are. So like that's part of it. Could be that 98% of the AI is trained on the English language. Who knows?
Yep. It's also important to provide students with explicit guidance to stay in the own loop and always check and verify information against credible sources. And we want them to be ethical users and upstanders. We don't want them to use Gen AI to bully, to harass, to threaten, to intimidate, all the things. Because now it's even like they can make deep fakes themselves. They can make it look like people in their class are doing things. So we want to talk to them about why we don't do those things. And we want to teach them explicitly about misinformation and deep fakes and let them know that these things exist. And just because you see it on social media does not make it real ever now. So this is just an example of how we've like introduced potential bias in AI. I was working with a 4th grade class and they were using school AI as a chat bot as an introduction to a PBL. And we explicitly told them, hey, like when you use this, don't give it your personal information. Don't give it things like your address, your phone number, your full name. And it's going to be wrong at some point. So we introduced it with the idea that they have to be the fact checker and that this AI bot is going to give them the wrong information and to look for the wrong information. And it made them much more critical consumers, like right off the bat, because right off the bat, they were like, they're giving wrong statistics. This is inaccurate. And they were writing down notes to fact check. And so it made them better critical thinkers. And they took a lot of notes. They were like, I'm going to have to look this up in different sources. And it just changed the whole dynamic of how that went down. And they weren't just consuming, they were critically thinking about every output. So I really liked that we did that time. We also want to teach lateral reading for fact checking explicitly and how they should open up the tabs and double check that output. So like our 4th graders wrote down their notes and they were going to go back in later and do this, but for a middle and high school, they should definitely be doing lateral reading. I have some resources here. If you click on that bottom link, you can get that handout. There's some like graphic organizers and things like that at this post down here. Where you could like just use that graphic organizer that I made. It was not made by AI. And you could have your students just practice with lateral reading and checking a chat bot, even if it's school AI or Magic School or something like that. Okay.
Are we already to the environment part?
No, we're not. I didn't move that slide. I'm going to skip. It didn't. Oh, this didn't update.
It's okay. We can talk about it.
Okay. No, we got to go to this one. We'll come back to that. This didn't update.
It's okay.
Okay.
Why did it not update?
I don't know. We didn't refresh.
I should have put like hyphen James at the end of this one too. I just I don't know. I just have so many thoughts and reservations about this. Like, I'm 47. I've had, I don't know, 45 years of some memories of interacting with books and music and movies and TV and articles and other people and sessions and college courses. Our students do not have that background knowledge, especially our youngest ones who are being pushed with AI things like from this conference. Like, we're saying you should be using this with elementary students. I just don't get that. I can look at AI and be like, oh, that's definitely not a real desk because it's shaped the wrong way. Oh, that's definitely not a real picture of Jupiter. That's one that Canva generated because I've seen real pictures of Jupiter. I just don't think they have the ability, I think you can go to the next one. They don't have because I talked about a few things, like background knowledge, they just don't have that. They have not had the time. They've not had the experiences that we've all had as adults. They just haven't. And I think the next one is experience. It's kind of the same thing. Like, I'm judging the AI outputs based on my own life experiences. Like, I know when I look at the stuff that it generates about school libraries, I can be like, yeah, it's kind of like 80, 90% correct. But when I look at generative AI stuff about, I'm making this up, calculus, I have no clue. I don't know because I don't have that experience or background knowledge. I think there's one more. Context. I think this is important too. So we've been telling some people here at this conference, do this, do this, do this, try this, try this. The AI has no context. It does not generally know, unless you tell it and then you don't really know because there's so little transparency in all this stuff. You could say I'm from Kentucky, but it does not know IEP laws. It does not know our standards. It does not know all of these things. Even if it's been in their training data, it still does not know it. It's in that training set, but it doesn't mean that you're talking to an actual thought partner who knows about the things. So it's just something I worry about with our students, especially because they're younger and just have less of all of this. Is that mine still?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. I just added this last night. This is a study from Microsoft, the people who tell us to buy Copilot. So while Gen AI can improve worker efficiency, it can inhibit critical engagement with work and can potentially lead to long-term over-reliance on the tool and diminished skill for independent problem solving. Higher confidence in Gen AI's ability to perform a task is related to less critical thinking effort. Like, that seems wildly problematic for a tool that we were saying should be used in education. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, so for student learning and creativity, I think James brings up some good things, right, that we have to take into consideration. It is a nice hook to be able to like have kids interact with a chatbot. It is cool to have kids like go into even ChatGPT and have it create like or act like a tutor for them. I've had teachers who use that with their own children who are maybe struggling with physics, and that teacher set up ChatGPT to act like a tutor, uploaded the teacher's study guide, and ChatGPT sort of discussed with the student this physics for review. Worked really well for that student. What we are seeing is studies that are starting to come out that show the impact of learning. And so what I'm doing as a coach is I'm watching John Hattie's visible learning structures just to see what the impact is going to be on student learning so that I can make better decisions. So right now, one of the only things for chatbots is it says that chatbots have the potential to considerably accelerate learning. Okay, so I'm going to like set up a school AI, right? I'm going to set up a school AI room. But I saw another study recently that suggested that students who used AI initially performed better, but then longer term didn't retain the information. So there's going to be conflicting studies, which is why I think we have to keep going back to John Hattie's visible learning. So when I looked at he had 94 studies and 4 meta-analysis. When I looked at that, it was all for language learning. So probably like, what was the one where the owl just died? What is wrong with me? I can't remember the name of that. The language learning apps. So if I'm a teacher.
Oh yeah, Duolingo.
Duolingo. Dude, their social media is unhinged if you're not following them.
It's
So
actually AI generated. We don't. It's not a real person.
if I'm gonna use AI, I'm gonna prioritize that as a learning opportunity for language learning specifically, and then I'm gonna keep checking back in with John Hattie's stuff to see if there are more studies, to see what else I could use, and know that it's not going to be super icky.
And I'm going to push back a little bit because even if there's a billion studies, again, 6-7 months ago, if you were under 18, you couldn't use these tools. I don't know how many great studies we can have if you weren't even allowed to use the thing. The study I gave you about the critical thinking was from adult workers. It was not kids.
Yeah, that's the other thing to look at is, are they studying kids? Because really, I mean, this is also new. I'm not sure what the learning impact is going to be. So one of the ways that we're working with teaching and learning is we have worked to develop formalized guidance. And I would strongly recommend districts do this. This took us about a year. I mean, really, like I came back from KISTI last year and showed all of my colleagues, like in the tech department, we looked at different guidance. We looked at the KDE guidance that came out. We looked at national guidance and identified our priorities. And then I came back and I wrote up our guidance document, and then I got feedback from them and revised it. And then I got feedback from a group of teachers and revised again. And then we got feedback from administrators. So this is a year-long process that we've undergone to create guidance for teachers and what our purpose of use is, like what we consider responsible use, and how we want to like create a secure environment for students. This is going to change. It's iterative. Like as things come out, as we learn more, we've already identified that this is not going to be like, we might not even have this version 1, even though it's like version 10, really. We're not going to have this version 1 maybe next year because things change so rapidly and we have to stay on top of it. Inside of this, though, we have like our guiding principles about learning. Ethical compliance is really big, and having intellectual partnerships, safety, ongoing things. We have a definition section as I scroll down further. And then the way I kind of wrote this is I developed it so we could just print pages and give it to the audience. So like this is for student use. We're starting off here at the top with ethical and academic integrity, and what does that mean, and how they need to disclose and explain their use, ways they should use and ways they should not use. So we've like really made it obvious what we want students not to do and what we want students to do. This is a newer section down here that kind of came from another source, and everything is documented in here. Just like what we're allowed to, we have to be able to answer yes to these questions. We have to keep humans in the loop and not like talk to our chat bot about our problems with friends. We need to talk to humans about that. So that kind of goes into the ELIZA effect, which we might not get to. But and then we also have a section on teachers and what teachers need to do, or how teachers need to use it, and how teachers need to check. So that document just kind of goes on and on as far as like working with that. And then let me see if I can get back into this. So that is there. You guys can take a look at it and sort of review that. But that's one of the ways that we are working to identify bias, misinformation, disinformation, and kind of cut that off with students. The other thing is we want it to be kind of as far as student learning goes, we want to really think about this in bigger terms. So like we're using Common Sense Media's AI foundations to train teachers, to help teachers understand. And then this year I had a cadre where we explored a lot of these topics. We had a lot of discussions about when to use it, when not to use it, how to write a policy. And so it's just becoming part of like our culture to train, and then we're trying to broaden that out. And that's kind of how we're
bullcrap machine link, that is not for kids. Don't send that. Send your kids to that.
Yeah. Okay, and then as far as creativity and learning goes, again, I'm going to point back to lateral reading and fact checking. We want to make sure that we're teaching students to fact check the AI. The AI is not always going to be correct. Even if you've set up a bulletproof school AI chat room for them, like they need to be able to check that information. We also want to model appropriate use, including disclosure. So as educators, if we use AI in a presentation, it needs to say that. If we're using it in our lesson plans, we probably need to write a note to our administrators. If we're using it to write an email, we might want to put in our signature, AI may have been used to help revise this. Like that's pretty, I mean, those are just small things that we can start doing to disclose use. And then as far as like cheating goes, I feel like this is, I hate saying this, but we have to know our students' work because they're using AI. But if you know your students and you know their work, it's going to be like just when they got a friend to write their paper, you know what their language sounds like, you know what they do. And AI is the same in a sense. Like it is a little harder to detect through like Turnitin. You can't use those kinds of tools, but you can probably tell when students are using words that they've never used before. And so it takes having a conversation with them and focusing on process and product. I have a couple links here that might be helpful to take a look at. Like the one at the top over there, top right, we used for inquiry. Like that's a sample inquiry process where we embedded AI. And then I've got just some articles there.
And I'll say cheating is at the very, very bottom of my list of concerns, like at the very bottom. And every webinar I sign up for that talks about ethics in AI, I get there and then I realize in the first 2 minutes, all they're talking about is cheating. They're not talking about what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then, and I've said this before, but just go ahead and make sure that you're explicitly defining when they should and should not use that AI. This is an example from the inquiry process where they had to reflect. So throughout our assignments, we're building in lots of reflection, lots more reflection than we probably ever did, because we want them to reflect on the output explicitly that they're receiving from that ChatGPT to identify bias, misinformation, and disinformation. As far as creativity goes, I have been using it more for creativity, and I don't feel like my creativity has been hindered. One of the things I'm using is Notebook LM, and when I write up a blog post for my teachers, I put the blog post with the sources I used into Notebook LM, and I create a podcast. Environmental impact of that is probably horrible. I would say probably the longer it takes to generate something, the more energy it's probably using to generate it. I am using that though, and I take the initial podcast and I put it into iMovie and edit it. So I edit out some of the banter. I'm sure you guys have seen Notebook LM and how that works. But I edit out the banter, and sometimes what I'm finding is that the way it structures it was better than the way I structured it. So then I go back in and edit and make some changes.
And it's always the same two people, right?
Yeah.
That sound just like you.
And I have not named them, even though I really want to, because they're not real people.
Yeah.
I really want to name them.
I feel like their skin color is real.
Yeah, they sound like they're on NPR. So then the other way I'm using it, or have used it, is this was like in the very beginning, 2023, when Firefly came out. I used it to help with the social study. I wrote the social studies text for our first grade because that is so hard to find content for. And I had all these primary sources, and I added Firefly generated images to it to just like make it look cuter, because my first grade teachers were like, Heidi, this is ugly. So I used Firefly for that, but it wasn't very many images, and I documented them. So, I mean, for my part, I use it because I think it does help me creatively, because I can't draw. And I mean, if I was going to generate a ton of content and try to publish this work out to like the world, I would want like a real artist to illustrate stuff. But like, it's just me working in district trying to create social studies stuff that our kids want to look at.
So we're at the end.
Yeah, I'll get back
to it. We timed that pretty well. No, it's fine. We got like 1 minute. We can just go to the last slide.
Okay.
1 minute and 15 seconds.
Good job, James.
For my timer.
We skipped 2 sections.
It's okay. Go back 1 slide. So all this junk that I've been telling you is not just all from me. It is from a bunch of people I've been following, thanks to some other people like Tom Mulaney, and like I have this big giant list of people on that picture there that I drew myself, not AI, and it's people that you can follow. There's one called the AI Hype Machine 3000. It is not for kids to listen to. They use F words all the time, but they're really mad about AI, and I understand why. So if you listen to that, just don't be offended. They have lots of good information. The modern day oracles or bullcrap machines, it's like a whole kind of like interactive course that you go through, and they talk about, it's a little more pro AI than I am, but it does a good job of telling you how the AI actually works and not just selling you a bunch of magic garbage. And then there's our emails. Oh my gosh. I put that there this morning. I was hoping she wouldn't see it.
No, you can eat the cheeseburger with me if you want. Like, that's fine.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah. If you have questions, please let us know. Thank you. Good job.